2026 has officially begun, but the real question is not who is the fastest, it's how competitive the grid really is. Australia, give us the first answer. Pure pace, no simulations. Q1 marks the first real performance benchmark of the 2026 season. After multiple testing sessions in Bahrain and Spain, qualifying begins under maximum performance conditions. The objective is simple: extract the absolute limit of the car. 6 drivers are eliminated in this session. The midfield shows a tight cluster between P12 and P15, with the less than 2 tenths separated them. However, across the full field, the spread is significantly larger compared to previous seasons. Top teams show a strong consistency between both cars. Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull place within the top positions early on. Despite traffic and dirty air typically challenges of Q1, execution remains stable across the leading teams. This phase is particularly demanding as drivers are still adapting to maximize performance under qualifying conditions. Max Verstappen loses control after a lap-up. Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll fail to set time. Isaac Hadjar delivers a strong performance with P5, while Charles Leclerc secures P6. Compared to 2025, the field is noticeably slower and more spread out. Average lap times are approximately 4.4 seconds lower. The density index drops from 99.42 to 98.38%. The 2026 regulation introduced a less compact field in Q1. While insulated groups remain competitive, overall grid dispersion is higher, signaling a different competitive dynamic at the start of the season. Q2 confirms what Q1 only suggested. Performance gaps are growing, and consistency starts to define the field. Q2 reduces the field to 16 drivers under tighter performance pressure, where execution becomes critical. All drivers set a lap time, with over 2 seconds covering the full field. Compared to Q1, the field becomes more compact, although still less tight than in previous seasons. Top teams begin to consolidate. Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, and Racing Bulls place both cars in Q2, while Red Bull and Audi advance with a single car. George Russell secures the fastest lap again, with a gap of over 4 tenths. Leclerc, Antonelli, and Piastri follow closely behind. Meanwhile, Hadjar and Bortoleto continue to stand out with strong performances. Compared to 2025, the field remains slower by approximately 3.5 seconds. However, in Q2, the overall spread becomes closer to previous levels, although still with a slightly lower density. If you are interested in how the 2026 grid is evolving, make sure to follow this series. Each round, we break down performance, gaps, and competitive structure. Q3 defines true competitive order, where margins are minimal and execution determines pole position. Q3 defines the final grid, where track's evolution and optimal conditions allow drivers to extract maximum performance. Only 9 drivers set a representative lap time, with a total gap over 2.7 seconds across the field. Mercedes dominated the session with P1 and P2, followed by Red Bull and Ferrari in the fight for the top positions. George Russell secures pole position with a gap of nearly 3 tenths over Antonelli. Hadjar delivers a standout performance in P3, while Leclerc follows in P4. Compared to 2025, the field remains significantly less compact, with a higher spread and lower density, confirming a wider performance gap at the top level. Q3 confirms that under maximum pressure, performance gaps expand again, defining a clear competitive hierarchy at the front of the grid. Qualifying in 2026 reflects pure performance, with no margins and no excuses. As teams continue to adapt to the new regulations, these performance gaps are expected to evolve over time. Currently, the fastest lap shows a deficit of over 22%, while average performance drops close to 27% compared to 2025. This confirms that the competitive structure of the grid is still developing. Race confirms what qualifying suggested. Performance gaps don't just exist, they expand under race conditions. Over race distance, performance is no longer defined by a single lap, but by consistency, reliability, and execution. Mercedes delivers a dominant performance with a 1-2 finish, confirming a strong interpretation of the 2026 regulations. Ferrari follows with a P3 and P4, maintaining competitive consistency. Only 13 out of 22 drivers finished the race, resulting in an efficiency of just 59%. This highlights the current lack of reliability under the new regulation. A total of 10 drivers are lapped. This indicates a significant performance gaps across the field, far beyond what was observed in qualifying. Performance and resilience emerge as the two defining variables of the 2026 season. Speed alone is not enough. Sustaining performance over race distance becomes a real differentiator. The race confirmed that the 2026 grid is not yet converging. Instead, performance gaps expand under race conditions, defining a fragmented and evolving competitive landscape. Fastest lap reveals a different story. Under race conditions, 2026 is actually faster than 2025. Fastest lap is set under race conditions, where drivers must balance performance, tire management, and power sources over long stints. Faster lap appears quicker in 2026 compared to 2025, but this comparison is heavily influenced by track conditions. The 2025 race was held under wet conditions, while 2026 took place in dry conditions. This makes direct comparison unreliable, as grip levels, tire performance, and track evolution differ significantly. This means we cannot use fastest lap as a direct indicator of performance gain. Instead, it highlights how sensitive lap times are to external conditions, rather than pure car capability. Faster lap does not confirm that 2026 cars are faster. It confirms something more important. Context defines performance. Without comparable conditions, lap times alone cannot determine true car potential. If you want the full analysis, including all data, indexes, and comparisons, you can download the complete report in the link below. Australia didn't just start the season, it revealed how 2026 is really behaving. Across qualifying, the grid showed large performance gaps. In Q1, the field was highly dispersed. In Q2, it partially compressed. And in Q3, under maximum pressure, gaps expanded again. Over race distance, those differences didn't disappear, they grew even further. With only 13 finishers and 10 drivers lapped, performance and resilience are now defining the grid. And yet, under optimal conditions, lap times may look more competitive. But without comparable conditions, this cannot be used as a proof of higher performance, which means the real challenge is not raw speed, but consistency and control. The 2026 season is not yet covering, it's still evolving. The next phase is not just about lap times, it's about who can hold their ground. At grid level, will the field begin to compress, or are we seeing the start of a real separation? At team level, can Ferrari sustain its consistency and resilience, or will execution start to break under pressure? And at driver level, the fight becomes personal. Can Russell extend his winning momentum, or will Antonelli be the one to disrupt it? China is not another round. It's where early trends start to become a real histories.